Deep dives and blue skies. Welcome back to Talking Blue with Nick, the best Dodgers analytical podcast that you can find.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Talking Blue, the best Dodgers analytical podcast that you can find. I am your host, Nick. You are listening to episode 108 of Talking Blue. We are here today to recap the Dodgers and the Padres series, the four-game series that just wrapped up like 30 minutes ago, actually. I'm going to recap all four of those games. Dodgers take 3 out of 4 from the Padres at home. A couple of them were actually in comeback fashion, as you can see by the title of the video. A couple of really exciting wins. The offense looked really good. Unable to complete the sweep Sunday afternoon. Padres got out of there with a win. But at the end of the day, you take 3 out of 4 from your division rival, increased your lead in the division. I think it's up to like 14 games now. 59 wins on the season. All great stuff. So, as always, you can get this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Turn on the notifications so you don't miss any of the videos dropping. You can follow us on all social media at Talking Blue Pod. That is Instagram, TikTok, and X. You can also follow myself at Nick Talking Blue on X. I tweet all about the Dodgers. All right, so before we get into the 4 games, let's do some injury/roster stuff. All right, so the very first thing at the top, Shohei Ohtani. He left his game/start, but it was really after he came out of the game Friday when he made his start. After he was done pitching, he stayed in the game as a DH like he typically does. He was pinch hit for in the 7th inning, I want to say. Left with precautionary right bicep soreness. So he's basically just felt something in his right bicep, and he told them, hey, and they said, all right, let's get you out of there. So they did not play Shohei Saturday night's game. He was not in the lineup, although he was back Sunday, so it has not seemed like a big deal. Like it originally didn't. He said that he felt it earlier in the year, so all great signs, but obviously just got to report that stuff. Tommy Edman hit on the ankle Saturday night when he was in the lineup, and then he was scratched, a late game scratch before Sunday night's game. This sucks. Now, so far, a late scratch does indicate that he didn't feel too bad, but we're going to just have to see how this plays out. I really hope Tommy Edman does not, he has dealt with so many reoccurring ankle issues that, hopefully this was more just precautionary because he got hit and maybe was a little bit sore, bruised or whatever, but if he starts dealing with ankle issues again, I'm going to be so pissed because this dude has not been able to get his ankles healthy. It's absolutely crazy. So I can't believe that happened, but hopefully it is nothing too big, and he'll be in the lineup Monday night against the Rockies. All right, Evan Phillips, he will be activated Monday before the Rockies series. So welcome back, Evan. I can't wait to see him pitch, one of my more favorite relievers as a Dodger fan, honestly. I'm so excited to see that guy back. That's really sick. And then the last guy, Edwin Diaz, he expects to go on a rehab assignment this week. So that's great. So probably, like I've been saying, sometime towards the end of July, early August is when we could see Diaz be activated. That's pretty much all the updates. Glasnow, Will Smith, Kike Hernandez are all very similar updates. Not really much progress there. So let's go ahead and let's get into the very first game. All right, let's start with game 1 of the series. Roki Sasaki, Thursday night, he's taking on Randy Vasquez of the Padres to get the 4-game set underway. In the top of the first, the Padres get on the board right away. 2-0 lead thanks to a Manny Machado home run, his 17th of the year. Next inning, Roki Sasaki gives up a home run to Jackson Merrill, his 9th of the year, makes it 3-0. In that same inning, in the second inning, with 2 outs, couple runners on base, Sasaki has a chance to get out of the inning with just the 3-0 deficit, but unfortunately, he allows a 3-run shot to Jake Cronenworth to double the Padre lead. 2 innings and 6 runs allowed from Roki Sasaki. He ends up getting through 3 innings pitched. Dodgers would claw back into this game. That's exactly what you want to see when you fall down to a big deficit early on in the game. So Dalton Rushing in the second inning, he hits a 2-run shot to make it a 6-2 ball game, his 10th home run of the year. Next inning, third inning, Max Muncy, he doubles into right field to make it a 6-3 game, so the deficit is cut in half. Kyle Tucker right after that makes it a 6-4 game with an RBI single. Then Andy Pages in the 4th inning ties the game with an RBI double down the left field line to make it a 6-6 game. Mookie Betts right after that, he hits a double of his own into left center field to make it a 7-6 game. Dodgers take the lead, keep it moving. Right after that, Max Muncy, an RBI single, makes it an 8-6 game. In the 5th inning, Tommy Edman, he doubles to make it a 9-6 game. He also comes in on a wild pitch to make it 10-6. Dodgers would tally on some more runs in the 6th and in the 8th. Dalton rushing with a sac fly and an RBI single. The Padres would tally on a run in the 9th to make it a 12-7 game, but the Dodgers would win by a score of 12-7. Ton of pitchers in this game because Sasaki didn't go deep. He goes 3 innings pitched. Will Klein for 2, Brock Stewart for 1, Vesia for 1, Edgardo Henriquez for 1, Paul Gervase for 2/3 of an inning, and then Tanner Scott for 1/3. He just came in to get 1 out. All right, so let's talk about Sasaki. Obviously, he was bad in this game. He ends up going 3 innings pitched, 7 hits, 6 earned runs, 2 walks, 3 strikeouts, and of course the 3 home runs. His ERA is up to 5.40. He was obviously horrible, okay? And as soon as Sasaki was beginning to turn his season around, he's gone back in the other direction, all right? The command has gone back to being an issue, and he's just getting destroyed in the zone, all right? Those have been really the 2 biggest keys with Sasaki is the command and then, really, what the fastball looks like. Is the fastball getting outs, getting some swing and miss, or is it just getting crushed? As soon as I got my hopes up and got my belief up about Sasaki, and I still believe he can and will be a good pitcher going forward. Still a young guy, as we know. But, we know that about a month ago, a little over a month ago, he started to get us all really excited. Like it was finally coming together. We were headed in the right direction. Well, now Sasaki's gone back to struggling. And, as a whole, it's just, continued his overall pretty poor season. So let me give you some numbers that kind of explain all of this. So from May 1st to June 5th, so a little bit over a month, this was that pocket window where Sasaki pitched really good. 27.2% strikeout rate. That's very good. 5.8% walk rate is pretty much elite. That's a great walk rate. And he had a 186 batting average against. He was in the zone 52.4% of the time, and he had an 86.2% in-zone contact rate. All right, his fastball had a batting average against of 232. All pretty great numbers. All right, and if you could even minimize a couple of those starts, the numbers would actually look even better. All right. Since then, though, since that post-June 5th area, all right, basically that's after that great start he had against the Angels at home. His 18.3% strikeout rate with a 13.4% walk rate. So those are both very bad. No strikeouts and a ton of walks. 300 batting average against. He's in the zone 48.6% of the time. So that's about a 4% decrease of being in the strike zone. And an 89.3% zone contact rate. So about a 3% increase in contact in the strike zone. All right. And the batting average against on his fastball is up to 357, well over 100 points from 232. All right. The issues with Sasaki, it's always stemmed from his bad command in the fastball getting crushed. He did a lot to kind of cover up those fastball concerns, getting more spin rate on the pitch, the better IVB, the better vertical break. The velocity's even ticked up the last couple months, which has still continued. All those things have pretty much still continued. But for whatever reason, I think that what happens with Sasaki is as soon as he starts to get out of the strike zone, and it's not at the rate that he was early on. I know that 13.4% walk rate sounds horrible. But, he still hasn't had a ton of 5 walk games. I mean, what did he have? He had 2 walks in this game. So the command has still been an improvement from where it was the first month and a half of the season, almost 2 months. Or no, what was it? Yeah, first basically month of the season. But it's still, as soon as he kind of teeters back to having not as great command and he's not in the strike zone as much, that's where a lot of the issues stem. And then overall, when the fastball is getting hammered like that, it just really, that's really the key. I told you guys before about what he's done with his splitter, going to a traditional splitter as opposed to the forkball previously. But it really his improvement really came with the fastball being better. It wasn't getting crushed. It was it improved in terms of the swing and miss rate and all that kind of stuff. So that's where all this stems. They're going to have to get back in the lab and figure all this out. Obviously you're not really worried about the Dodgers because they're playing great right now, and a lot of guys in that rotation are pitching good. But obviously Sasaki was starting to look like a very interesting piece going forward, with the rotation and all that. Well, now he's gone back to, not really sure what his role will be at the end of the year. So there's still a ton of time. He did pitch well for an extended period of time in that month of May. But things definitely have taken a step back, and they're going to have to figure this thing out once again. All right. Last thing before we go ahead to game 2 of this series. What a fun offensive game. I mean, falling down 6-0 right away and then tying the game in the 4th inning, that's actually pretty wild. I mean, as soon as you fall down big early in a game like that, your immediate thought is just you got to just chip away to get back into the game. And the fact that they did that pretty immediately and then took the lead and went out big kind of immediately, like by the 6th, 7th inning, they were winning by like 12-6. So I wanted to talk about Dalton Rushing and Kyle Tucker, who each had 4 hits in this game. Mostly talk about Dalton Rushing because don't talk too much about Dalton Rushing, given that he is technically a backup catcher. Now, obviously, we know the last month or so, he's basically become the primary catcher with Will Smith going down. And, it's been an interesting year, to say the least, from Dalton Rushing. I know that he's become a really polarizing guy, especially on social media, with a lot of things, a lot of his antics, I'll say, behind the plate. He seems like he's a very emotional guy. I'll be honest, this isn't the most clickbaity thing, but I don't get too wrapped up in all that stuff. I think Dalton's a competitive guy who will let his emotions, leave it out all. He'll leave it all out on the field, wear his emotions on his sleeve. Sometimes he'll, sitting on the dugout bench after a strikeout and he'll be like punching himself in the head. Sometimes he'll show emotion after a big hit or a big home run. He's still a very young guy who, again, obviously just wears all his emotions on his sleeve. And, I think a lot of it is kind of overblown, but at the end of the day, it's just who he is. But one thing about Dalton Rushing, if you've watched this podcast, I've always been a pretty big fan of him, or I should say like a believer. He was a top prospect for a reason. And I've always thought it's a little weird that he's kind of turned into their backup catcher. I think it's almost a little unfair in a certain way because he really should be given the chance to be like an everyday catcher for a big league team. But the Dodgers have used him in this role, and it's obviously worked out in their favor this year because of the Will Smith injury. But a guy that I've always been a fan of because he was a legit top prospect who could really, really hit. And he even showed to me last year that he wasn't just like a hit-first catcher. He actually could play the position pretty well. His defensive metrics haven't been as good this year. But still, when you watch him behind the plate, he is a pretty solid catcher. But what Dalton Rushing's always been able to do is hit. I always could tell eventually, especially from his first game. I remember him getting called up a year ago in May against the A's, making his debut. I think he singled in his first at-bat, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe he walked, but I could always tell right away that he had a very nice swing. He's just such a typical-looking catcher, like kind of short and stocky, got those thick legs, thick arms, short, compact swing. He just looks like a guy who was made to be a catcher, and I wanted to show some numbers. Obviously, he doesn't have a ton of plate appearances, given that he's been a backup catcher for a lot of the year. He only has about 165 plate appearances, but these are catcher ranking. Well, let me give you a slash line, actually. So he's hitting 261, 342 on base. That's pretty solid. 491 slug is great. Almost slugging 500. 833 OPS is obviously great. 129 WRC plus. Among all catchers with 160 plate appearances, he's 7th in on base, 4th in slug, 3rd in OPS, 3rd in WRC plus. All right. He has an 858 OPS against right-handed pitching, and he also has a 759 OPS versus lefties. So he is holding his own versus lefties, which he has struggled with in the past. He's cut his strikeout rate from his rookie year to this year 10%. So 37.4% last year. That's a horrible strikeout rate. Down to 26.7 this year. So he's cut that strikeout rate down a massive amount. All right. He also hits 306 versus four-seam fastballs with a 510 slug. He's turned himself into a pretty nice player. A lot of value for this team. Seems to be learning a lot behind the plate. How to handle the challenges, how to handle the pitching staff, all that kind of stuff, calling pitches. So he's an interesting guy, there's no doubt, but he is very, very talented. There's no doubt in my mind that if this guy was an everyday catcher, he would be a very, very good catcher, especially as he gets older and gets a little bit more seasoned And yeah, shout out to Dalton Rushing because he's been great. An OPS over 800 here in early July. A lot of credit for him. I've always thought he's a guy that would hit, but he's doing it right now. Kyle Tucker, he is in his last 7 games, 864 OPS. Like I said, he had 4 hits in this game. They've been showing the stat all year on the broadcast that he has only had one. There's only been one time all season that he's had back-to-back multi-hit games. That's kind of been the thing with Tucker all year, is that it's not that he's just been bad all year. He has showed spurts and he's actually had decent stretches where he's hit very well. What he's just not been able to do is like fully get going. It's almost like as soon as he has put together a good week, a good 2 weeks, as soon as it starts to get into that like 2.5, 3 weeks territory is when he starts to struggle again, and then he's never really just gotten going. Like Mookie Betts right now is the guy who's really turned around his season. And it's pretty much been the last month, since like early June is when he really started to turn it on. It's been this slow, gradual climb where he started to look a little bit better, and then the last couple weeks he's just been red hot. And then even like in this series so far, he's only had a few hits, but you see his at-bats and you could tell like he's turned a corner and he's just gotten better and better. Tucker's not really been able to do that all year. That's kind of been the biggest thing with him. Because if you go back to the end of April into May, he had a really, really good, decent-sized stretch, but it really just lasted like 2.5 weeks or so, and then he started to teeter off and slump again. So that's really been the thing with Tucker, is that he's not been able to get going for an extended period of time. So we'll have to see if he can continue this. It's only been about, really since he got hurt in Minnesota about a week and a half ago when he missed those couple games of that series and then came back. Ever since then, he's looked a lot better. So last couple things, Mookie Betts, Max Muncy, Tommy Edman, they all had 2 hits in this game. That's great. And shout out to the bullpen. 6 shutout innings after Sasaki gave up 6 in the first 3 innings. So they had to cover a lot of ground, and they did. All right, let's go to game 2 of this series. Shohei Ohtani is on the mound. He is hitting in the lineup, so he's DHing and pitching. He's taking on Michael King, the very good right-hander of the San Diego Padres. All right, and Michael King was dealing early on in this game. Padres actually get on the board in the first inning. Gavin Sheets an RBI single into right, makes it a 1-0 game. Skip ahead to the 4th inning. Jackson Merrill, he hits his 10th home run of the year. Back-to-back home runs. Back-to-back days with a home run for him, makes it 2-0. And then in the 6th inning, an RBI double from Xander Bogaerts, all off of Ohtani, makes it a 3-0 game. So Dodgers down 3-0 as we head to the 7th inning. Michael King is out of the game now. Adrian Morejon comes in. Bases loaded. Teoscar Hernandez is at the plate. Nobody out. Obviously, the Dodgers are down 3. He hits a grand slam to left center field to jump the Dodgers on top with one swing. They go up 4-3, and they actually win by a score of 4-3. That was the difference in the game. All right, Shohei Ohtani goes 6, Kyle Hurt for 1, Edgardo Henriquez for 1, who is having a very nice season. Edgardo Henriquez is quickly turning into that high-leverage reliever that we all dreamed of. And then Tanner Scott comes in for the 9th. He actually struck out the side, got his 12th save of the season, and he continues to look very, very good. When the All-Star game, as the All-Star game continues to, the picks come out, we know who's going to be the starters now and the reserves. Usually when there are injuries, you have like all-star replacements. I wouldn't mind to see Tanner Scott as one of the picks. He's had a really deserving all-star first half. So let's talk about Sasaki before we talk about that, let's talk about Ohtani before we talk about that grand slam. All right, let me give you his final lines. He goes 6 innings pitched, 7 hits, 3 earned runs, 2 walks, 9 strikeouts. He did give up the 1 home run to Merrill. That was actually the first home run Ohtani's given up at home all year. One of Ohtani's strong suits this year and it was the same thing last year, not really giving up any home runs. I mean, I know that for the longest part of the season, he had barely given up any runs and had the ridiculous ERA. We know that changed in the month of June, not pitching as well. But he really has just not given up any home runs, which is great. That's pretty crazy. That was his first one all year that he gave up at home. So, Shohei, this was a great start. Really one of his first great starts in a few weeks. He did allow 7 hits, which is a lot for Shohei, but 19 whiffs with 9 strikeouts, that definitely helps that out. The first thing I noticed about the Shohei start, he threw a ton of sinkers in this game. All right, he threw 18 to be exact. And his previous season high was his previous start against the Twins, which was 10. So Shohei, for a lot of the year, has really relied on his two best pitches, his four-seamer and his sweeper. It's funny because he does throw a lot of pitches like sinkers, cutters, curveball. He even mixes in a slider, which is a different pitch from his sweeper. But really what he relies on heavily are those two pitches, the fastball, the four-seamer, and the sweeper. I've noticed since the struggles began early on in June, he has began to mix it up a tad bit more, mixing in a little bit more sinkers, like I said, the last two starts, cutters, not so much being just four-seam or sweeper reliant. The increase in sinkers is with good reason because it has a 143 batting average against this year, which is the best for him in his career. He hasn't always had a sinker. I think he added that pitch in 2022. He didn't really throw a sinker before that. Every year since then, this year, 143 batting average against is better than all those previous years. And part of the reason as to why he has a career best 52.1% ground ball rate. That's great. His sweeper and his four-seam fastball are two of the top 20 pitches in the game according to run value. The sweeper is the best of all sweepers in terms of run value. 6th lowest batting average against of all sweepers and 10th highest whiff rate. So his sweeper, legitimately one of the better pitches in the game, arguably the best sweeper overall in baseball. All right. He has a 1.79 ERA, which would rank second if he qualified. All of these numbers this is where he would rank if he qualified in terms of the innings limit. He is now at 85 innings pitched, which puts him on track, I believe, to throw close to 160 innings. So hopefully at the end of the year, he could qualify for some stuff. This month of June really put to bed a lot of the Cy Young stuff. I haven't talked about that at all. And on top of that, the dominant season from other guys in the NL, like, Mizorowski, Christopher Sanchez, Zach Wheeler, even Yamamoto, a couple other guys. So Ohtani's definitely been taken out of that to a certain extent. But regardless, even with his struggles as of late, his numbers overall are still ridiculous. I mean, 1.79 ERA. Again, all these numbers, if he qualified, he doesn't qualify, but when you lower the innings pitched qualification, 2nd in batting average, 4th in FIP, 5th in WHIP, 13th in strikeout rate, 2nd in barrel rate, 11th in hard hit rate, 9th in whiff rate. All right, even with the struggles in June, he is still a top 10 pitcher in the game. All right, and just for fun, when you combine his pitching and hitting WAR, it's at 5.3. That puts him on pace for an 11.5 to 12.5 B WAR, which would be top 10 of all time. All right, I've talked about that previously. You could actually go to one of my YouTube videos on Talking Blue or Baseball Mondays. It talks about Shohei Ohtani. It's not a podcast. It's like a 4-5 minute YouTube video talking about Shohei Ohtani's incredible season that we're watching. When you combine the pitching and the hitting that he is doing, both at an elite level, even with the bat being a little bit cold the last week, he is on pace to have a record-setting WAR season. All right, up there with the bests of Babe Ruth and a couple other guys in terms of baseball history. He is on track to have a top 10 season. All right, and if the bat gets a little bit hotter in the second half, it's still in the 900s, and he still put to bed his cold start to the season that he had in April. Heat back up in the second half. He definitely seems like he's a little bit tired right now. Obviously, we already talked about him, bicep injury or bicep soreness coming out of this game. He's definitely, it's a lot to ask for him to go out there and hit and pitch, and the Dodgers will keep an eye on that stuff. That's why I think that all the Cy Young stuff will be kind of put away because they're going to, I feel like in the second half, they're probably going to be a little bit more hands-on, a little bit more careful with Shohei. Just make sure he's ready to go in the postseason. But phenomenal season, and he's pitching great, even with those struggles in the month of June. Last thing before we go to Game 3, the Teoscar Hernandez grand slam. That was pretty epic. All right, down 3-0 in the 7th inning against a Padres bullpen that is very good. Adrian Morehound is one of the better relievers in the game. To go up 4-3 on one swing like that, pretty epic. All right, obviously grand slam puts you up a run like that from being shut out to up a run just like that is pretty epic. Hopefully that gets Teoscar going a little bit since he came off the IL this week. I think that's the biggest swing of the season so far in terms of just like massive moment, electric moment. Obviously, the Dodgers have like a 14-game lead in the division, so it's not big in terms of that. Like, it's not going to – will it likely mean a lot in the end? I mean, who knows? But I just think in terms of it, being at home late in the game against a rival team, big moment like that, definitely the most electric moment of the season so far. And a great call by Joe Davis. I put it out on my TikTok, and it got a lot of likes so far. He set that call up perfectly. Let's go to Game 3. All right, before we go to the last game of this series on Sunday night. Game 3, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, 4th of July, Saturday night, taking on Wandy Peralta as the opener, and then Griffin Canning came in after him. He was slated to be the starting pitcher. So let's start there. Andy Paez puts the Dodgers on the board first in the bottom of the 3rd inning with a single into left field. Dodgers wouldn't score again into the 6th inning thanks to Freddie Freeman. We're going to talk about him in a sec. I feel like we've talked about him a lot lately because he's been hitting so great. Solo home run to right field, his 15th of the year, makes it 2-0. And then in the 8th inning, another RBI single from Freddie Freeman makes it 3-0. This came off of Mason Miller, actually. And the Dodgers win by a score of 3-0. They shut out the Padres to get the series win, going for the sweep on Sunday night. So we're going to talk about Yamamoto. Oh, let me give you all the pitchers. Yamamoto for 7, Brock Stewart for 2/3, Vesia for 1/3. He got out of a little bit of a jam in the 8th inning, and then Will Klein actually comes in to get the save. Right now, Dodgers bullpen has looked a lot better the last few weeks. Really, ever since those struggles began in early June, they have been really, really good since then, and it's like almost everyone in that bullpen you can trust in terms of like, you got Will Klein, you got Tanner Scott, you got Vesia, you got Kyle Hurt. So many guys have stepped up, man. Even like Jack Dreyer as of late. A lot of these guys look really good. Edgardo Henriquez has turned into a legit weapon. And, in a 3-0 game, in a save opportunity, you bring in Will Klein, and he gets 2 strikeouts to get the job done. That's pretty great. Let's talk about Yamamoto. He was fantastic, all right? 7 innings pitched, 3 hits, no earned runs, all right? And Yamamoto actually allowed 2 hits in the 1st inning and another hit in the 2nd inning. After that, he allowed no hits. 2 walks, 10 strikeouts. Great performance. He got 16 whiffs in this game. And again, things that stand out to me, like I talked about with Ohtani a second ago, what stood out to me with Yamamoto in this game was what he did with his splitter. Okay, before I get there, let me just talk about 10 strikeouts. That matches his season high in one start this year. Really good to see him pitch good against the Padres because that's one of the few teams that have hit him well throughout his career. Obviously, famously, his first career start game against the Padres, he had an ERA over 4 against them in his career before Saturday night. So what I was going to say about his splitter, no hits allowed on the splitter, which he threw a career-high 35 times in this game. 6 whiffs on that pitch. The feel for that pitch has been a tad bit inconsistent as of late with that signature pitch. But overall, he still has a 150 batting average against 32.4% whiff rate. So, you could kind of see it if you watch him that the last few weeks he hadn't had as great a command on that pitch, but he threw it a career-high 35 times in this game. That is interesting. All right. But overall, 4th lowest batting average against among all splitters in baseball. He also had 6 whiffs on his four-seam fastball. His velo has actually increased this year on his four-seam fastball. So last year it was 95.4. This year it's up to 96.1. He's averaging 96 on that fastball. He averaged 96.9 miles an hour Saturday night. From opening day to May 31st, so the first 2 months of the year, he averaged 95.8. Since then, from June 1st on, he has averaged 96.5, nearly 97 miles an hour. That's pretty crazy. Yamamoto's increased the velocity by a lot. His four-seam fastball had a 19.2% whiff rate last year. This year it's up to 30.5. Very key. Yamamoto's never been a big swing and miss four-seam fastball guy, but he is this year for whatever reason. That is top 20 in baseball. His ERA is 2.49, which is 7th best in baseball. 2nd in batting average against, 2nd in WHIP, 10th in expected FIP, 9th in walk rate, 2nd in opponent WOBA. All those numbers are great. Don't be surprised if he sneaks his way into the NL Cy Young race. I don't think he'll get it, obviously, over Mizorowski or Christopher Sanchez, but don't be shocked if with all this talk about, so many other guys that at the end of the year we look up and Yamamoto finishes 3rd in Cy Young voting or something like that. Don't be surprised, especially if he has a big second half because he's pitching great right now. And, even with Ohtani pitching the way he has, Yamamoto is the Dodgers' ace. He's as reliable of an elite pitcher as we have in baseball today. He is just phenomenal. The strikeouts, the ground balls, the great command, not allowing walks. He's as good as it gets. All right, he's one of my favorite pitchers to watch. And then before we wrap up and go to Game 4, I just wanted to talk about Freddie Freeman some more. We've talked so much about him lately because he's been so good for 2 months now, but it's just amazing, honestly. 2 for 3 on Saturday night with 2 RBIs and a home run. All right, he's been on fire for a long period of time. He's just been raking for weeks now. His last 7 games, an 1107 OPS. His last 15 games, an 1113 OPS. His last 30 games, a 1049 OPS. He is at 1,000 OPS the last month, all right? Since May 1st, he has easily been a top 10 hitter in the game. Check out these numbers since May 1st. 58 games, by the way. That's a big sample size. 318 batting average. That is 5th in that time period. 417 on base is tied for 2nd. 559 slug is 10th. 976 OPS is 6th. 168 WRC plus is 4th. At 36 years old, he's 12th in average and on base, 19th in slug, 14th in OPS, 12th in WRC plus. And for a lot of the year, when it came to the All-Star voting, it was really Matt Olson and Bryce Harper were a little bit more deserving for the first base spot for the National League. But right now, Freddie Freeman, who is always right on their tails, with Olson struggling a little bit and Freeman just getting red hot, he's really jumped both of those guys. And he was announced the starter Saturday night. Again, a couple weeks ago, I would have said, well, I wouldn't be mad at him starting, of course, but really maybe those guys were a little bit more deserving. Not anymore. He is the more deserving guy. He's got better numbers than both of those guys. And I know he doesn't have as many home runs, but the OPS, the WRC plus, the numbers speak for themselves. He has been better, and he is deserving to start the National League. For the National League, even at 36 years old, he'll be 37 in a couple months. Crazy. This contract that he's on is going to end up being one of the greatest contracts of all time, honestly. The fact that he only got $160 from the Dodgers, right? $160 million, I think it was. He has just been amazing, man, even at his older age now. So what a contract. What a player. All right, so Game 4, Sunday night, Emmett Sheehan is on the mound versus the left-hander JP Sears. All right, that game just wrapped up, like I said, not too long ago. All right, so let's do that game. In the top of the 4th inning, scoring got underway. Jackson Merrill, an RBI single, brings in Manny Machado. This was off of Emmett Sheehan. Now, no scoring until the 7th inning. Dodgers down a run. Top of the 7th, though. Fernando Tatis on a little infield single brings in a run to make it 2-0. Manny Machado with a big home run, 3-run shot, makes it 5-0, dead center. Puts the Padres up 5-0. Dodgers would try to claw back. Alex Freeland, an RBI single in the 7th. Shohei Ohtani, an RBI single right after that. Also, these were both off of Adrian Morejon, which also, like I said earlier, he gave up the lead to the Dodgers in that Friday night game. But unfortunately, the Dodgers lost. Mason Miller came in and got his save, his 22nd save of the season, and the Dodgers lose by a score of 5-2. Unable to get the sweep, like we talked about, but they do get the 3 wins. Overall, it was a very good series. Emmett Sheehan gets the loss. He goes 4 1/3. Jack Dreyer for 1 2/3. Kyle Hurt for 1, and then Paul Gervasi playing the Jonathan Hernandez role. He goes 2 innings. And that was all she wrote. Let's talk about Sheehan quickly. I'll be pretty quick on this game, honestly. Let me give you his final line. He goes 4.1, 3 hits allowed, 1 earned run, 3 walks, 5 strikeouts. Didn't give up any home runs, so that is a plus. All right. Wasn't great, but wasn't terrible. Very just blah. Very nothing start from Emmett Sheehan. Just unfortunately continues this season for him. That's like, I wouldn't classify it as horrible, but obviously would definitely not classify it as anything other than that. He had 15 whiffs in the game. 6 of them were on the fastball. That's great. 5 strikeouts in 4 1/3. But he also had 3 walks, 96 pitches to get through 4 1/3 innings pitched is not very efficient. Padres made him work. Him and Sasaki, like we talked about earlier, they are kind of back to being the few struggling players on this roster. One of the few struggling pitchers. So you can't be perfect. Emmett's a young guy. Sasaki, we already talked about him earlier. Not really much to say. I still believe in Emmett Sheehan. Hopefully, the whiffs and all that. I want to make it sound like it was a positive, but Sheehan has never really struggled to get whiffs, even through the struggles this year. He still gets that stuff. Not giving up a home run was just, a positive. but still did manage to get through 5 and 3 walks and, yeah, got the loss. So what are you going to say? Hopefully Emmett Sheehan can, look forward to a strong second half. Finish off the first half next week with a good start against the Diamondbacks. And, pretty much last couple thoughts for this game. The Dodgers played great all weekend. So, comeback wins, great offense throughout the 4-game set. They were kind of due for a stinker. 2 for 6 with runners in scoring position, 7 runners left on base. They just didn't have it today. 4-game sweep would have been great, but obviously kind of asking a lot if we were, before the series, being a little bit more realistic. You take 3 out of 4 from the Padres. That's still massive. Probably only 1 win away from wrapping up the season series. We've talked about how massive that is. They got a big lead in the division. They got to keep it, though, because as I've chronicled, a year ago they were in a very similar situation with the division. We saw how fast that got dwindled down. It only took about a month to basically be back to even. Month and a half. So got to keep the foot on the gas, but that's pretty much it. I was a little disappointed selfishly because I actually just looked up today what is the record for most wins before the All-Star break. That is 66 wins, which was done by Mookie Betts' 2018 Red Sox. 66 wins before the break. Dodgers standing at 59 games today, entering today, with 7 games left to play in the series, obviously, or in the first half, gave them a chance to tie that record. Now they won't be able to do that. The best they could do is get to 65 wins and get pretty close, but still, things obviously look great. You get to 60 wins before the All-Star break, which they're 1 away. That's usually, most teams consider that like you're off to a fantastic start. Not a lot of teams have done that, honestly, throughout baseball history. So before we wrap up, Dodgers will go to finish the final week of their season at home. So that's great. They will play the Rockies for 3 during the week and then the Diamondbacks for 3 over the weekend. All right, so it'll be Eric Lauer versus Kyle Freeland on Monday, Justin Robleski versus Michael Lorenzen Tuesday, and then Roki Sasaki versus Ryan Feltner. That'll be on Wednesday. And then, like I said, over the weekend, it'll be the Diamondbacks. Likely Sasaki Friday. It'll be Ohtani, I believe, getting moved back to Saturday, and then probably, who will it be? Yamamoto Sunday, something like that. Maybe they want to give Ohtani a rest, not pitch him, have move up Yamamoto, something like that. We'll see how it all plays out, but hopefully Dodgers can get a little bit more healthy this week. Evan Phillips returning. Hopefully, we get good news on Tommy Edman. It seems like Mookie's wrist is fine. Shohei's bicep is fine, and all that is pretty good. So Dodgers are in a good spot right now. Looking forward to getting some more wins. Hopefully they can finish out the week strong. I would really like a nice 5-1 week to finish things out. Get to what would that be? 64 wins to finish out the first half. Sweep the Rockies. They are the worst team in baseball, and then a series win over the Diamondbacks. I think we should. I'm going to keep it strong, my expectations strong and stern, but I know the Dodgers are very capable, and they look great right now, especially the offense. And, so I didn't even mention, I talked about it earlier, but, congrats to the All-Stars that were announced for the Dodgers. Freddie Freeman starting at first base, Andy Pages starting in the outfield, Max Muncy starting at third base. First time he's been an All-Star since 2021. First time in his career that he will start. Then you also got Yamamoto as one of the pitchers. All right, so congrats to those guys. They are all very, very deserving. Hopefully we can get a couple more guys with some injury replacements. Robleski would be one of the guys as a starter. Obviously, I didn't even mention Ohtani, but we already knew about him. So that's the 5 guys. And then hopefully we could see Robleski possibly get as a replacement, and then maybe I wouldn't be surprised if Tanner Scott also got picked, and maybe the Dodgers could send 5 players to the All-Star game. So thank you guys so much for listening. As always, you can get this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow us on all social media at Talking Blue Pod, and you can follow myself at Nick Talking Ball on X. Thank you guys so much. I will see you guys Thursday to recap the Dodgers and the Rocky. Have a great night and a great beginning to your week.